Extremely high carbohydrate diets are actually ideal for gaining muscle. Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. And this is a topic that when it comes up, people don't always grasp. And again, there's quite a few experts who've discussed this. I've actually heard Broderick Chavez discuss this, who is a biologist by profession, who actually kind of a really an anabolic steroid expert, but he kind of points out this same thing, that really, in terms of hormone profile, carbohydrates are the only thing that significantly enhances muscle growth. And I think this throws a lot of people off because they're like, well, what about high protein? But there's a cap on that, right? There's an absolute cap on protein, and it's lower than people think it is, to where it doesn't seem to contribute to muscle growth at all. And at a certain point, really high protein overfeeding is mainly just a fat loss and weight loss tool. That in and of itself, usually beyond about 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight, it doesn't seem to have any anabolic effect, right? There doesn't appear to be any at all. In terms of fat, the only fats that seem to really contribute are polyunsaturated fats. At least in the literature, but again, they're better for body composition. The anabolic effect may be fairly small. But again, there's some evidence for that, but beyond a certain threshold, I don't know that they're going to do much either. But everyone notes that they're like, but really high calories seem to promote muscle growth, and we know that. We know that, but it appears to be largely the carbohydrate calories that are doing it. Because when people do really high fat diets, what happens? On their bulks, they gain more body fat. They're still getting an anabolic effect. But again, I've heard experts like Broderick say, yeah, but they're not gaining any muscle from the extra fat. That's his opinion. And I'm not saying he's right, because again, there are good experts who argue in both directions. But when we really start looking at it, where's the real magic? It seems to be carbohydrate, right? It seems to be carbohydrate because, again, like protein, carbohydrates are not going to be meaningfully stored as body fat. They don't hurt insulin sensitivity unless you're eating a bunch of refined fructose. So we need to be clear here. Carbohydrates themselves, other than fructose that reaches the liver, do not cause insulin resistance. They don't reduce insulin sensitivity at all. Okay? So something to think about there. All right. So again, the people who are really worried about that is more from the enhanced world, who are using a lot of insulin, or they're using too much HGH and things like that. You take those things kind of out of the equation. Carbohydrate doesn't cause that, but it does cause an insulin response, and insulin is extremely anabolic. It is extremely anabolic to muscle tissue. And people are like, well, what about the fat? But not to the same degree. Because again, what are you transporting into the fat cells? Are you worried about glucose in there? But subcutaneous fat in humans doesn't store carbohydrate. Okay, it doesn't. So again, kind of a non-issue. And insulin is not required to store fat or lipids in your blood into fat cells. That can be done through GLUT4 transport. It's absolutely not required. So again, just a point to think about, other than high circulating insulin levels will reduce fat burning. But are we talking about fat burning or gaining muscle? You're burning less fat when you're trying to gain muscle. Is that really a big deal? I don't think that it is. Yet we still see people recomposition on ultra-high carbohydrate diets when fat is kept low, right? That does happen. So we come back over to that point, the insulin response. And if we are strength training and we're eating a proper diet, what happens? Our insulin sensitivity goes up, and it's actually harder to get an insulin response. So carbohydrates become magical at that point, right? Doing whatever it takes to get more carbohydrate in probably is worth the most in terms of gaining muscle. Again, assuming you've got a baseline of healthy fats. Again, healthy fats being polyunsaturated fats. Again, people want to argue about certain things. Well, can't this be a healthy? It's like, no, their body has no need for saturated fat. I want to be clear with that. That's kind of a point people forget. there is no dietary need for saturated fat. The same people who will say things, well, there's no dietary need for carbohydrates. They fail to mention that your body can make saturated fat, and it has no actual benefits in terms of the dietary thing. There's no actual reason to consume it nutritionally. Just an FYI. People forget that little minor point when they bring that up with carbohydrates. Saturated fats are not essential either. Again, our body makes them. What do you think most of your body fat is on your body? It's saturated fat. You got plenty of it available if you need it for anything, right? Because our body does use it for stuff, but we have a reserve of it. We make it. We make it out of other fats. So again, not really necessary, but carbohydrate, again, fuels anabolic activity, has a large anabolic drive. And what I would say is people who consume more and more carbs, what happens? Your energy turnover goes up, thermic effect goes up, NEAT goes up. Right? Allows us to consume higher and higher calories to get a larger anabolic response. Okay? To the point to where there's a lot of really lean athletes who are consuming 700, 800, 1,000 grams of carbohydrates. Now, granted, that's fairly rare, but they do exist because there's also an upper threshold of which your GI tract can absorb. But that's a good position to be in, right? In terms of anabolic activity, to have an energy turnover high enough that you are capping out the amount that your gut can absorb. Okay? That is a phenomenal place to be in terms of body composition. Your ability to be jacked and lean, to have your energy turnover due to even the thermic effect, NEAT, everything else, high enough that you are absorbing the maximum amount of carbohydrates that you can in a day. That would really be optimal. That flux situation that John Perillo used to talk about even in the 90s, the bodybuilding coach. Okay. So again, I would point out to people that getting your energy turnover as high as possible, to even to where you're burning through 4,000 plus calories a day, that is a fantastic place to be. And to where you're maximizing absorption, because most people aren't going to absorb more than about 4,000 to 5,000 calories a day, and some people are not aware of that. Particularly if you're eating a lot of whole foods. But that's a great situation to be in terms of body composition, because you're going to maximize all the anabolic hormones, the energy, everything else, nutrient transport into the muscle cells. Okay? And you're probably not going to gain body fat at that point. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.